In 2011, at a mid-season training camp, a journalist asked Thomas Müller a simple question. What exactly do you do out there on the pitch? And Müller couldn't answer with any word that already existed. So he paused and he invented one. Raumdeuter, interpreter of space. A role that had no name because no one had ever played it before him. That word is the title of this video, and here's the promise. I'm going to show you the strangest thing about Thomas Müller, that three of the greatest managers in Bayern's history, Gaal, Heynckes, Guardiola, could never fully explain what he was, even while they built title-winning teams around him. And then, in his farewell in 2025, Müller looked back and said something that turns the whole mystery inside out. Contrary to popular opinion, my game is actually completely predictable. The man who invented a position nobody had played says there's nothing mysterious about it at all. This video is about what happens when a player is so original the sport has no language for him, so he has to build his own. Here's what makes Müller genuinely one of football's great puzzles. By every conventional measure, he shouldn't have worked. He's not fast. He can't really dribble past people. He has no signature trick, no highlight reel skill move, no burst of pace that makes you gasp. Müller said it himself. It was always said that people wouldn't understand how I could function at this top level. I'm obviously too slow, can't dribble, and so on. And yet, 25 years at Bayern Munich, 756 appearances, a club record, 250 goals, third in the history of the entire club. A record 13 Bundesliga titles, more than any player in the history of the German league. 2 Champions Leagues. A World Cup. So here's the stakes. How does a man with none of the tools we associate with a great footballer become one of the most decorated players who ever lived? The answer isn't a skill. It's not something you can film in slow motion. It's something almost invisible, an ability to read empty space that the human eye barely registers while it's happening. And the deepest part of the puzzle is this. The men paid to understand football, elite, world-class coaches, kept telling us they couldn't fully explain him either. Hold that, because if the experts can't describe it, what exactly is it? To understand why Müller needed his own word, you have to understand how football categorizes players. The sport loves its boxes. Striker, winger, number 10, box-to-box midfielder. Every young player gets sorted into one, and scouts, coaches, and analysts all speak that shared language. It's how the game is taught, bought, and sold. A player who fits no box is a problem, because if you can't name what someone does, you can't coach it, you can't recruit for it, and you certainly can't build a system around it. And in the modern era, this got even more rigid. The rise of data and analytics in the 2010s meant every player was increasingly measured against the profile of their position. Expected goals for strikers, dribbles completed for wingers, distance covered for midfielders. The whole apparatus assumes you already know what kind of player someone is. Müller broke the apparatus. He would drift into positions that no positional heat map could explain, arriving in pockets of space that seemed random until, suddenly, the ball was in the net. He wasn't the striker. He wasn't quite the winger. He wasn't the classic playmaker. He was somewhere in between all of them and nowhere at the same time. So when that journalist in 2011 asked him what he did, Müller wasn't being clever or poetic. He was solving a genuine problem. The language didn't have a slot for him. So he made one, Raumdeuter. Now here's the part of the origin that most videos skip, because the word wasn't invented by an academic, an analyst, or a coach. It was invented by the player himself. And that almost never happens. Think about it. Nearly every tactical term in football comes from outside the pitch. Tiki-taka came from broadcasters. Gegenpressing was popularized by coaches and journalists. False nine was a description imposed on players by analysts trying to explain what they saw. The people playing the game are almost never the ones who name what they do because they're too busy doing it to step outside and describe it. Müller did the opposite. He stepped outside himself, looked at his own game from the analyst's chair, and diagnosed it more precisely than any of them could. Listen to how clearly he understood it. With Raumdeuter, I was trying to explain what my main strength is, that I'm someone who's good without the ball. Good without the ball. Sit with how radical that is. Football celebrates what you do with the ball, the goals, the passes, the tricks. Müller identified that his genius lived in the seconds when he didn't have it. In the reading, the drifting, the arriving. The 95% of the game the cameras don't follow because the ball isn't there yet. And here's the origin of the whole idea, in his own dissection. I try to create brief moments of uncertainty in the defenders. Who's responsible for me right now? Then I exploit that. That's not mysticism. That's a manufacturing process. He deliberately positions himself in the seams between defenders, in the gap where no single opponent feels responsible for him, and in that flicker of confusion, that half-second where two defenders each assume the other has him, Müller is already gone, into the space, onto the ball, into the net. He didn't just invent a word. He reverse-engineered his own instinct and handed us the blueprint. And here's where the paradox comes alive, because watch how the greatest coaches in Bayern's history responded to him. Not one of them could fully explain him, but every single one of them played him. Start with Louis van Gaal, 2009. Müller was 19, a kid out of the academy, and nobody yet knew what he was.
I had installed Herman Kerland as my assistant because he knows the club, he knows the players, but also all the talentful young players. He said to me, we have Thomas Müller in the second team.
Van Gaal watched him and delivered a verdict with no explanation attached. Thomas Müller has to play, always. Not, he's a great winger. Not, he'll score 20 goals. Just, he has to play. A demand, not a description. Van Gaal couldn't tell you why. He just knew, on instinct, that leaving Müller out was a mistake. That season Müller played almost every game, and Bayern won the league and cup double and reached a Champions League final. Validation by pure instinct before the language even existed. Then Jupp Heynckes, 2012-13. Heynckes built the greatest Bayern team of the modern era, the Treble winners, arguably one of the best club sides of the century. Müller was a starter, central to all of it. And the best definition Heynckes could reach for was this: Thomas Müller isn't the best in the world, but he's the best at what he does. Look at that sentence. It's a masterpiece of not being able to define something. He can't tell you what Müller does. He can only tell you that nobody does it better. Validation by result, with the explanation still missing. And then the biggest test of all, Pep Guardiola, 2013. The most systematic, most detail-obsessed coach of his generation. A man who has a defined role and a defined space for every single player. And Müller? Müller was, by Guardiola's own logic, not his type of player. Here's the rehook, and it's Müller's own account. When Pep Guardiola came in, it was clear to me I'm not the typical Pep player. Nevertheless, I was the one with the most games in those 3 years, I think even with the most goals. Read that again. The most controlling tactician in football looked at a player who didn't fit his blueprint and still played him more than anyone else. Bayern's own records confirm it. Müller played the most matches under Guardiola of any of his 13 coaches. Confusion that turned into dependence. So now we hit the real tension of this video, the contradiction that makes Müller more than a fun stats story. We have 3 of the greatest managers in the club's history, and 3 different flavors of not being able to explain him. Van Gaal by instinct, he has to play, no reason given. Heynckes by relativity, best at what he does, without ever saying what it is. Guardiola by surrender, not my type, but my most used player. 3 brilliant football minds, and none of them could hand you a clean sentence that captured Thomas Müller. And then Müller himself walks in and blows it all up, because his description of his own game isn't mysterious at all. Remember it, contrary to popular opinion, my game is actually completely predictable. Predictable. He says he creates a brief moment of confusion and exploits it, a repeatable, mechanical, almost boring process done over and over for 15 years. So which version is true? Are the coaches right that Müller is some indefinable, unteachable phenomenon that even the greatest tactical minds can only gesture at? Or is Müller right that it's simple, predictable, a trick you could write on a whiteboard? Find the seam, wait for the doubt, go? Here's why they can't both be trivially true. If it's really as predictable as Müller claims, then it should be coachable. You should be able to teach it, clone it, produce 100 Müllers. But we didn't. In 25 years, football produced exactly one Raumdeuter.
Well, he's gone all the way himself, cut it back nicely. Müller looks for the top corner.
That more direct approach, and Thomas Müller!
Been turned on, and the turbo's there as well. Have the ball in play, Müller!
The role he named has had no true successor, which suggests the coaches were onto something the player is too modest or too close to it to admit. And that's the complication that gives the video its edge. The most honest man in football describing his own gift might be the least reliable witness to it, precisely because from the inside, genius always feels obvious. It's only from the outside, from the coaches' chairs, that you can see how strange it really is. So who's telling the truth? The coaches who couldn't explain him, or Müller who says there's nothing to explain? Here's the resolution, and I think it's the most beautiful thing about him. They're both right, and that's exactly what makes a Raumdeuter. Müller is right that the action is simple. Create uncertainty, exploit the gap. Mechanically, that's all it is. You could diagram it in 10 seconds. But the coaches are right about the thing underneath the action, the part you can't put in a diagram. Because the hard bit was never the running into space. The hard bit is knowing which space, a half second before it exists, out of the 1,000 possible spaces on a pitch. That's not a skill you drill. It's a way of reading the game, an interpretation in real time of where the ball is going to want to be. Which is exactly why the word he chose is so perfect. Not Raumläufer, space runner. Raumdeuter, space interpreter. He didn't call himself someone who runs into space. He called himself someone who reads it. Interpretation, not execution. And that's the answer to the whole puzzle. The reason the greatest coaches couldn't explain him is that you can't explain an interpretation. You can only recognize it when it's happening. Van Gaal recognized it and said he has to play. Heynckes recognized it and said best at what he does. Guardiola recognized it and played him more than anyone despite every instinct in his system. They all saw it. None of them could say it. And that gap between seeing and saying is the exact space Müller lived in his entire career.
That nickname.
Raumdeuter, yeah, very good. Oh, it was not bad. Right. The pronunciation was not bad.
But the English translation is space interpreter.
Yeah.
On the pitch, in your words, what does it mean to interpret space?
I think it was... I came up with this phrase when I was a very young player. In Germany, nobody could really explain my way to success or to that amount of success I had in my first years. I was a starting player at Bayern at a young age. I had a great World Cup 2010, was the best goal scorer. So the people had problems to explain themselves or to understand why I'm so successful without any special skills they are normally used to measure. You know, maybe speed, sprinting, shooting, dribbling, passing, I don't know.
So the man who invented the word to explain himself was right that the mechanism is predictable. But he was too humble to admit the truth the coaches kept bumping into, that reading space that well, that consistently, for 2.5 decades, is not predictable at all. It's one of the rarest gifts the game has ever produced. Rare enough that when he needed a word for it, none existed, and rare enough that 15 years later, the word still only describes one man. Müller didn't just fit a position that didn't exist before him. He was the position. And when he left, it left with him. So let's go back to that training camp in 2011, and a player inventing a word because none of the existing ones would do. In 2025, after 25 years, Müller left Bayern, not to retire, but to keep playing.
And now, it is time to say farewell, here in Munich anyway, to Thomas Müller, his family all here. He was always bound to start this game. It's simply not going to be the same without him. Müller time for the final time in the Bavarian capital. A local hero with a universal platform. And a guard of honor being formed fittingly. Thomas Müller, as ever, with a broad smile etched on his face.
Joining Vancouver Whitecaps in Major League Soccer, where he's still finding those same seams of space on a different continent. He walked away from his boyhood club as its record appearance holder, its record assist maker, and the most decorated player in the history of German football. Not bad for a man who was too slow and couldn't dribble. And here's the legacy that outlasts the trophies. Most great players leave behind highlights, moments you can replay. Müller left behind a word, a concept that didn't exist before him, and now lives in the language of sport. Commentators use it. Analysts use it. Kids who never saw him play will inherit it. He didn't just play the game well. He added a term to how we understand the game. Think about how rare that is. Pelé didn't name a position. Maradona didn't name a position. They were incomparable, but the game already had words for what they did. Müller was the opposite kind of great, not the best at a known thing, but the only one an unknown thing. So unknown it needed christening. So here's the question I'll leave you with. What's the greater legacy, to be the best in the world at something everyone understands, or to be so original that the world has to invent a word just to describe you. Because trophies get equaled. Records get broken. But Thomas Müller gave football a word it didn't have before, and that might outlive every single one of his goals. Tell me in the comments, is Müller the most underrated great of his era, or exactly as appreciated as he should be? I want to know where you land.